Yeah, unfortunately, I have a shit camera system. I'm aware of it, and I'm unfortunately in debt, so I can't be shelling out money to fix it to get a better one right away. So tough it out, man. Anyways, I got myself in temporary stupidity, and that I had debt out, and then like dumbass old me a bet too aggressively on my Amazon store, and I'm being too harsh on myself. I made a boo boo, as far as that stuff's concerned, and it will be dealt with, by the you know like second quarter of next year. Like we'll be mostly in the clear by then, and I can aggressively pay off at that point. And I don't exactly know what's going to sell inventory wise over the next couple of months. I mean, some of my um, One Piece shit is basically moving finally, and I'm looking for a desperate Data Live Kurumi fan that's willing to shell out over like $5,000 on merchandise of hers that me and another seller are like basically a duopoly across the internet on. We have the only two, and there's only going to be like 16 of that particular toy ever produced, and so we're asking a lot for it. You know, Kind of seems like the manufacturer decided to make the toy and then realized that they did. I don't know. Maybe they thought the market wasn't wide enough, and But yeah, that particular toy, there just aren't a lot of them floating around, and they kind of pulled out, and they didn't even fulfill my full order. I was expecting them to produce like 10 units for me, and they only gave me six. So I have that problem, and I've got more of her, but I didn't order enough to get ungated. You know, on the company that's behind it, so I have to go fix that problem as soon as possible. And I've got all these other issues, and so yeah. Anyways, I made this video to talk about the China problem and everything in the economy over there, but yeah, that camera is not going to be replaced, anytime soon. And in the meantime, I don't want to just, shut up and not produce like literally anything that I upload to YouTube. Like, hi, I'm still alive, Invictus Mineo. Despite my haters, I remain unvanquished. you know, but I just wanted to update you guys on that, but I also wanted to say that I've been watching the unfolding and unfurling Evergrande crisis, which is not, I feel that it really Evergrande crisis, it doesn't really make sense to describe it in those terms, because what we really have is a failing property sector in China that's just the whole sector wide with really no holdouts. Everybody's having problems, and Wild Country Garden like made their most like recent debt payment. Like they're in trouble, and it's questionable like how long they're going to hold out and be able to make those payments. So we've been seeing catastrophic levels of default, and the fact that there was a calculation made that the population boom in China was going to be much bigger than it actually turned out to be, and that the effects of birth control and everything else basically led to overbuilding and malinvestment by a pretty significant amount in the ghost cities and everything else that's going on over there. I mean, I've been watching all this, and what's been going through my head, honestly, is not only that, but it's also the observation mentally that what COVID-19 did to the idea that China was going to be the world's factory is also beleaguered and underwater at this point, because we all like all the US companies are headed by people who have enough foresight and intelligence to be, glancing at the fact that during the shutdowns that happened and the zero tolerance shutdowns that happened in China and all the craziness that we witnessed that the country was going to go through, you know, America in a lot of people's minds went too far. Not maybe mine. I thought, I don't know, like the economy, like we could afford to shut down for a little bit of time, but after a while, it kind of became obvious that the economy can't take this for much longer. It's going to have to reopen, and we're going to have to live with COVID as a phenomenon because the economy just can't take this battering that it's taken from being shut down all over the place in the United States. But China went much more aggressively and much more apathetically to the effects that it was having on their economy, and the manufacturers all looked at this and the difficulties that it was creating in the supply chain to have, this huge manufacturing hub over there in China that, has been dubbed the world's factory, you know, and just sitting there and everything and all the issues that it caused for it to be, you know, for the economy to just basically be frozen in place and not really doing anything. And so they're all like, I think we should diversify some of our operations to India and Vietnam and, develop the ability to manufacture outside of China because and also we can get cheaper labor in Vietnam than we're getting because Chinese expectations have risen now that they've experienced some of that middle class prosperity over there in China. And so it's like, I'm looking at all this, and I've been told my whole life China was the future and that, you should start learning the Chinese language. And now I'm looking at what's happening, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's really the case anymore. It did look for a long time like it was going to be the world's future, especially with the Belt and Road and phenomenon and everything. And now, and for a while, like here in the West, we were looking at the build out of, roads and infrastructure that was happening over there with a considerable degree of envy, considering that here stateside, we have really big problems with potholes and collapsing infrastructure, and that just has not been invested in, and bridges getting D ratings because they are not reinforced enough to deal with the amount of traffic that's being put over them by the Society of Civil Engineers, and seeing all of this on the edge, and with a feeling of jealousy, and it's hard not to look at Japan and their bullet train systems that travel at 300 miles per hour along the tracks with a considerable degree of envy. And it just like that feeling is pretty major, of just jealousy towards the Japanese for having the train systems that they do. And it would be really great if we could connect the West and East Coast, via trains going that fast, to have a really great train system. But because of America's auto manufacturers lobbying against it and the lobbyists that they have, it makes it very difficult, to overcome that and, develop alternatives because they get in the way of any legislation that might build something like that here. They're against it because they want us all completely dependent on our car way of life in the United States. And they make it difficult anytime somebody tries to build out, alternatives to being a car, driver. I mean, if these are incumbent industries that really, I mean, like this is anti-capitalist shit that we're seeing go on, where they're literally, trying to prevent any competitors from emerging via the regulatory process. It's a lot of bullshit. And these hijinks have been going on in the American economy for a long time and are basically just put up with because these people can afford to pay for your campaign and donate huge sums of money to it to help send you back to office and everything. And, in the United States, the candidate that's the best funded tends to win. And it's just an ongoing fucking horror show. in that kind of way. Like you've got incumbent industries that are doing everything they can to prevent disruption from actually happening and rigging the process in their favor, and it's a lot of bullshit. It's like, anybody that calls this like a truly capitalist system is a little bit like, no, because most of the people that believe in capitalism that I know would point to this and say like this is an example of the Lovecraftian economy that we've got, that has never really been truly a free market. Is what they would say, and I'm having like trouble from like an intellectual perspective disagreeing. I mean, how is it a free market when presently when you've got incumbent industries that are basically harping on legislators with shoveling money in their faces, like trying desperately to get them to not commit any taxpayer funds towards something like building out a train system, and the build out or really anything. And I think that another thing that's like of the cesspool of a system that we've got that's pretty horrifying is that in order to be like competitive with the global markets these days, you will see that like Oregon, where I live, for instance, has to give massive subsidization and handouts, to level the playing field with building somewhere else to get the tech sector to actually like build something here and build a fab or manufacture chips here. Like, the governors pretty much have had to bribe them in order to actually do it with taxpayer money. And I'm not against that sort of like economic interference. I just think that it kind of goes to show you that the US is really not an example of a free market. It's never really existed anywhere on the fucking planet. That they all developed in this kind of way. And now that we live in a globalized economy, it's like that's what you're going to see. In order to prevent these assholes from building somewhere else in the globe, we're going to have to bribe them locally to put something up. But yeah, you know, but yeah, I don't know, but I digress. I look at what's going on though overseas there in China, and I'm having a moment of kind of like stunned, just being shocked by what I'm seeing. And it's not that I can't bring myself to believe it. It's just that this is definitely not what I expected. I thought for a long time those of you that were saying that China was the future were right, and now I'm looking at it and I'm like, holy shit, that world is just disappearing before my very eyes.